I came home from college to visit. My bedroom was empty. "Oh," my mom said. "We gave it to your cousin. You can sleep on the couch." So I tossed my keys on the counter and said, "Actually, I'll sleep somewhere else." She thought I was joking, until I walked right back out, and they had no idea where I was headed. I'm 22, and I just finished my last semester of college. It was supposed to be a big deal for years of hard work, late night studying, juggling part-time jobs, and stretching every dollar just to make it through. I wasn't expecting a parade when I came home, but I thought my family might at least be happy to see me. My relationship with them had always been complicated. They never really understood why I wanted to go to college in the first place. To them, it was a waste of time and money. My mom especially didn't get it. She used to make little comments like, "I don't know why you're working yourself so hard when you could just get a decent job here. Or you're not one of those stuck-up career types now, are you?" Still, when she called and invited me home for the weekend, sounding genuinely excited, I thought, just for a second, that maybe things were different now. That maybe, after 4 years, they'd finally started to respect the choices I made for myself. The drive home was long but familiar. 3.5 hours of highways, back roads, and old songs I used to love. I found myself thinking about my room. The one thing in that house that had always been mine. The thought of sinking into my old bed, staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars I stuck on the ceiling when I was 10, gave me a weird sense of comfort. But the second I stepped inside, something felt off. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just a weird feeling. The air in the house felt different, like it didn't quite belong to me anymore. I glanced around and noticed little things, things I didn't recognize. A pair of men's shoes by the door, bigger than my dad's. A hoodie draped over the back of the couch that I'd never seen before. Then my mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "There's my college girl," she chirped. Her smile was too wide, too practiced, like she was trying too hard to act normal. I gave her a small smile, still adjusting to the feeling that something was off. "Hey, Mom." She pulled me into a quick hug before stepping back and clapping her hands together. "We've made some changes," she announced, like this was some kind of game show reveal. I barely had time to process that before she turned and started walking down the hall, expecting me to follow. I hesitated. "Changes? Oh, nothing major," she said over her shoulder. "Just some rearranging. You'll see." Something uneasy twisted in my gut as I stepped into the hallway. It looked the same. Same worn-out carpet, same family pictures on the wall. But as I got closer to my bedroom door, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door was open, and my room wasn't my room anymore. The walls were a different color. The deep blue I had carefully picked out as a teenager was now an impersonal beige. The posters I taped up, the bookshelf filled with novels I collected since middle school, the old stuff there I kept on my bed, they were gone. Everything was gone. Instead, there was a different bed. A bigger one. A different desk pushed up against the far wall. A duffel bag sat open on the floor, clothes spilling out. A pair of sneakers, huge sneakers, were kicked off near the closet. It took a second for my brain to catch up with what I was looking at. Someone else was living in my room. I turned slowly, my mouth dry. "What is this?" My mom was standing in the doorway watching me carefully. "Oh," she said with a little laugh, waving a hand like this was no big deal. "We gave your room to Zach." Zach, my cousin, the one I barely saw growing up, the one who bounced from one job to another, always making excuses for why life wasn't fair to him. The one my mom had always insisted we had to be patient with because he's just going through a rough patch. I stared at her waiting for some kind of punchline, some kind of just kidding, but she just kept smiling like this was normal. I let out a breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. "You gave my room to Zach?" She nodded. "Well, honey, you don't live here anymore." It didn't make sense to keep the room empty. I felt a strange heavy pressure in my chest, like something was sinking inside me. She kept going, like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "You know how hard things have been for him. He just needed a place to stay, and we thought, well, since you're off at school." I barely heard the rest of what she said. My ears were ringing for years. For years of struggling, pushing myself, doing everything on my own. And the second I was out of the house, they erased me. Like I had never lived here at all. She must have noticed the look on my face because she quickly added, "You can sleep on the couch. It's only for a little while. I knew you wouldn't mind." That was it. That was the moment something in me just snapped. I took a slow step back, gripping my keys. "Actually," I said, voice steady, "I'll sleep somewhere else." Her smile faltered. "What?" "Don't be ridiculous." But I didn't answer. I turned, walked right back down the hall, grabbed my bag, and headed for the front door. I could hear her calling after me, something about not making a scene, but I didn't stop. I didn't even look back. I didn't even fully process what I was doing until I was already in my car, the door slamming shut behind me. My hands were still clenched around the steering wheel, knuckles white. My breath felt uneven, like I had just finished running even though I hadn't moved more than a few steps. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the dashboard. Where was I even going? I hadn't planned for this. In my head, I had pictured coming home, sleeping in my bed, maybe even getting some kind of lukewarm acknowledgement from my family that they were, I don't know, proud of me, that they had missed me. Instead, they had wiped me out of the house like I was never there, like I was some temporary guest rather than their daughter. I glanced back toward the house. The lights from the front porch cast a dim glow across the yard. And through the window, I could see movement. My mom still standing near the front door, probably waiting for me to cool off and come back inside, like I was being dramatic, like this was normal. I turned the key in the ignition and backed out of the driveway. I had no idea where I was going. The streets were quiet, just the occasional street lamp flickering as I passed. I kept driving half on autopilot, letting my mind race through the events of the last 15 minutes. They had given my room to Zach. Zach, who had never held a steady job for more than a few months. Zach, who had spent most of his adult life couch hopping because he couldn't manage to keep his life together. And yet, he was the one they made space for, not me. I tightened my grip on the wheel, my jaw clenching. It wasn't even just about the room. It was the principle of it. The way my mom had acted like this was no big deal. Like it was just common sense to give away the only space I had ever truly called my own. I checked my phone, half considering calling a friend, but it was late. Most of the people I was still close with from high school had either moved away or were wrapped up in their own lives. The few college friends I had lived hours away. I could get a motel, but the thought of spending money just because my own family had kicked me out of my space made my stomach turn. Then, almost without thinking, I found myself turning onto a familiar street, Ezra's house. I hadn't talked to him much in the past few months. We had been close all through high school, the kind of friendship that felt like it would last forever. But college happened, and life got in the way. We had kept in touch here and there, occasional texts, a few video calls when we had the time, but I hadn't seen him in person in over a year. Still, when I pulled up outside his house, I felt an odd sense of relief. His car was in the driveway, which meant he was home. I hesitated for a moment before stepping out and walking up to the front door. The porch light was on, casting a dim glow across the worn-out welcome mat. I knocked, then took a step back, suddenly unsure if this was a good idea. A few seconds passed. Then the door creaked open. Ezra stood there, squinting at me like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. His hair was messier than usual, like he had been half asleep, and he was wearing an old hoodie that I vaguely recognized from years ago. Did I hit my head, or are you actually standing on my porch right now? I let out a weak laugh, but it came out more like a breath. Hey, Ezra. He blinked, looking me up and down. Then his expression shifted, his easygoing demeanor faltering just slightly. You okay? I exhaled. Not really. For a second, he didn't say anything, just looked at me, taking in whatever mess was probably all over my face. Then he sighed and stepped aside. Come in. I hesitated, glancing back toward my car, but the idea of driving around aimlessly again made my stomach churn, so I nodded and stepped inside. The house smelled like something slightly burnt, probably whatever late-night snack Ezra had been making before I showed up at his door. The living room was the same as I remembered it, cluttered but comfortable. A half-empty mug sat on the coffee table, and a game controller was tossed onto the couch like he had abandoned it mid-session. He closed the door behind me, crossing his arms as he studied my face. All right, he said, voice quieter now. What happened? I hesitated, suddenly unsure how to explain all of it, but then before I could even stop myself, the words started spilling out. Ezra didn't interrupt me once. I sat on his couch, hands gripping my knees, and just let it all out. The call from my mom, how I actually thought for once that maybe she was happy to see me. The drive home, the weird feeling when I walked in, the moment I saw my room, my things gone like I had never existed there. I expected him to react right away, to say something sharp or sarcastic, but instead, he just sat there, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, listening. By the time I finished, my throat felt tight, my hands still tense in my lap. Ezra exhaled slowly. Wow, he finally said. He shook his head. That's messed up. I scoffed. Yeah. Little bit. He sat back, rubbing his jaw. They didn't even tell you beforehand? Nope. I leaned back into the couch, pressing my palms over my face. They acted like it was just a natural next step. Like, oh, of course, my room should go to Zach. Of course, I wouldn't mind. I don't live there anymore. So why would I care? Ezra was quiet for a second, and when I looked at him, his jaw was tight. That's not how normal parents treat their kid, you know? I let out a humorless laugh. Yeah. Well, my parents never really followed the parenting manual. He shook his head, muttering something under his breath before looking back at me. What's their deal with Zach, anyway? I mean, I remember him being kind of a loser, but this is next level. That was the question, wasn't it? I shrugged, but the truth was I knew. I had always known. They've always babed him. I admitted. I don't know why. I guess because he's just helpless. He messed up, and they swoop in to fix it. He wastes money, and they cover for him. He loses a job, and they understand. I paused, staring down at my hands. They've never done that for me. Ezra frowned. Because you don't need them to. I let out a short breath. Exactly. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? I had never needed them, not the way Zach did. I had always taken care of myself, worked for my own money, solved my own problems. When I told them I wanted to go to college, they laughed and said, "Good luck with that." When I got in, they barely reacted. And when I left, it was almost like they just forgot about me. Ezra leaned back, tapping his fingers against his knee. So what now? That was the real question. I had nowhere to go, not long-term anyway. I could crash at a motel, but that felt like admitting defeat. I could try to stay with another friend, but most of them had moved on, scattered across different cities, different lives. I exhaled. I don't know. Ezra was quiet for a second, then sighed. "You can stay here." I blinked. "What?" He shrugged, like it wasn't a big deal. "Stay here. At least until you figure things out." For a second, I didn't know what to say. It was tempting. Safer than a motel. More comfortable than bouncing from place to place. But I also knew my mom. She wasn't going to let this go. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. "Mom." Ezra must have seen my face change because he raised an eyebrow. "I'm guessing that's her." I swallowed. "Yeah. Gonna answer?" I hesitated, staring at the screen, the vibration buzzing against my palm. I already knew what she was going to say, that I was overreacting, that I was being selfish, that I was embarrassing them by making a big deal out of nothing. But I didn't owe her an explanation. I silenced the call and set the phone face down on the table. Ezra smirked. "Nice." I let out a slow breath. She's not done, though. And I was right, because 20 minutes later, the calls started coming in waves. First, my mom, then my dad, then of all people, Zach. I ignored them all. I wasn't surprised when I heard the knock on the door the next morning. I was sitting at Ezra's kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee and scrolling through my phone, fully expecting this. Ezra was still half asleep, sitting across from me in the hoodie he'd thrown on last night, eyes barely open as he poked at a bowl of cereal. The knock came again. Ezra raised an eyebrow at them. I sighed, setting my coffee down. Who else? I got up and went to the door. Sure enough, when I peeked through the peephole, I saw my mom standing on the porch, arms crossed, looking like she had been waiting for hours. I opened the door just enough to step into the doorway, blocking her view inside. She didn't even wait for a greeting. "What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. I blinked. "Good morning to you too." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Enough with the attitude. You didn't come home last night." I folded my arms. "Yeah, I figured since you gave away my room, I didn't have to check in like a child." Her jaw clenched, and I saw the exact moment she realized I wasn't going to back down. That threw her off. She was used to me keeping my head down, avoiding confrontation. "Well," she said, voice tight, "you could have at least stayed to talk about it instead of storming off." I let out a short laugh. "Talk about what? You made the decision without me. What was there to discuss?" Mom huffed, shifting her weight. "You don't even live there anymore. It just made sense. Zach needed a place to stay, and you're off at college. I come home. I cut in. Or at least, I used to. But clearly you didn't care about that." She exhaled sharply through her nose like she was barely holding on to her patience. "You're being dramatic." There it was. The classic dismissal. I clenched my jaw, keeping my voice calm. "No, I'm not. You didn't even tell me. You just erased me like I was never there." Mom threw her hands up. "It's a room. Don't be so selfish. Zach needed a place, and we did what was best for the family." The family. The phrase hit me harder than I expected because that's what it always came down to, didn't it? The family. The one I apparently wasn't a part of. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I shook my head. "Well, what?" I let out a breath, stepping back slightly. "You really don't see it, do you? You have been over backwards for Zach his entire life, and you've never done the same for me. You gave him my room because he's your priority, not me." Mom's face darkened. "That's not true, isn't it?" I gave her a pointed look. "Name one time you've helped me the way you help him." She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer. I scoffed. "Exactly." Her frustration turned to anger. "This isn't about favoritism. Zach needed a home, and we gave it to him at my expense. You're gone for most of the year. What do you expect us to do? Leave it empty? I expect you to respect me enough to tell me before throwing my stuff in storage." She rolled her eyes. We didn't throw it away. Oh, thank you so much for that, I said dryly. Her jaw tightened. Look, I came here to bring you home. Enough with this tantrum. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. I'm not coming back. That made her freeze. She blinked. What? I'm done. My voice was steady. You made it clear where I stand in this family, and I finally get it. So, no. I'm not coming back. Keep the room. Keepsake. I'll figure out my own life. Mom looked stunned, like she had expected me to yell, to break down, to lash out, but I was just done. You're overreacting. She tried again, but her voice wasn't as confident now. I smiled faintly. No. I'm just finally seeing things for what they are. I turned to step back inside, but she grabbed my arm. You can't just leave, she said, her voice lower now, almost panicked. We're your family. I pulled my arm away. Yeah? You should have acted like it. And with that, I stepped back inside and shut the door in her face. So here's where I'm at now. I'm staying at Ezra's place. My mom keeps calling, but I'm not answering. She showed up this morning, and we had a long conversation about everything, but it was clear that she still doesn't get it. She thinks I'm overreacting, that I should just suck it up and come back home, but I've had enough. I've been the one who worked hard to get where I am. I've been the one who made sacrifices, who made sure I didn't rely on anyone to take care of me. Meanwhile, Zach keeps getting a free pass, and I'm just supposed to be okay with it. I'm not going back to that house, but I'm starting to wonder, am I the a-hole for leaving? Should I just swallow my pride and let things go? My mom is convinced that I'm making this a bigger deal than it really is, but I feel like I've been pushed to my limit. Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in this situation? I'd love to hear your take.